Hey, welcome back to MEP 101, Unit 7, Areas of Services, where we're going to dig a little deeper. Make sure to grab a notebook. You're going to need to take some notes probably and write down any questions you have. That's what we're here for. We'll make sure to try to answer those to you as soon as possible. You have your colleagues as well, but feel free. You're never a bother. Happy to chat with you. The first thing I want to mention about services in this section is the areas of services that our staff works in. You'll realize when you start meeting staff from other projects that not everybody is a service provider. Everybody has different roles within services. We have those that are called liaisons. We have some projects that call them mentors, and everybody does a general thing, right? We provide some sort of service to our families, our students, and some projects you got to understand also that they are established to serve in the needs of the areas that they're in. That means that maybe in Scotts Bluff they won't have the same need for support in students that are or youth that are OSY, out of school youth, compared to Lincoln. Maybe Lincoln has more than Scotts Bluff, so therefore their service providers there are more of experts in that area. Omaha's a great example. They work a lot with OSY, so they look very different. They have a person that works directly with OSY full time, which is, I think, for some projects may seem like, what, you work with only OSY? Those are the things that you should be knowledgeable of as you move into interacting with your colleagues. Make sure to ask them, what areas do you serve, how do you do those things, because you may get a thing or two. The other area that I want to share with you is basically the service log that we have as a template. What I have here for you is the one for the year of 23-24. We had a few changes in the service code, so that's what got updated. This service log may look familiar, or you may never seen one of these, but each project has different ways to track services. We have started to implement a program called Connect Team that is basically like Google Forms, filling out the service log, filling out the service log through either your phone or on a questionnaire on the computer. But we have projects that also use this type of service log, which has very simple information to keep track of what we have offered to our students. Now, this is something that you can have a copy of that is available on the NDE website, or your project may already have a template that looks very similar to this. Some projects have more than just this because they want to keep track of other data. So that depends on the project. Next, I want to talk to you about the service code, which is a very fun conversation because we have a few service codes. This document is also available for you to be able to review and keep with you. I recommend you have a printed copy of it. It'll start by telling us the differences between a service and an activity, right? We talked about how a service has to be something that directly benefits the migrant child, addresses a need of that migrant child, and is something that's grounded in scientifically based research. And is known, basically we also say that it's also known as best practice. And lastly is something that is helping us obtain those MPOs, which mean measurable program outcomes. We would like to also mention that all of our MEP services are last dollar spent, because that's one of the main things when we talk about with our funding. We always provide supplemental support. We never supplant. Last dollar spent. Don't forget that one. MEP activities are everything else that we do. You can review that on this document. So let's dig deep real fast into the instructional service realm, which, like I've mentioned before, right, there are extra basically qualifications for a service to be an instructional service code, which are these right here. The other thing that to understand about instructional service codes is that some require a pre and a post assessment on an annual basis, such as English, language arts, and math. Those require one for students K through 8th grade. If you're providing a preschool service, then this one also needs a pre and post assessment. And lastly, if you are using instructional life skills code and the lesson comes from the consortium ISOSI, which has resources for us to use, a lot of curriculums that are created by teachers, this one also requires a pre and post assessment. Those are the only ones. The other ones can have a pre and post assessment, but that's all up to the project on how it is, basically how you target these services. The first service code is high school credit accrual. So this is when we get a student enrolled into a credit accrual class, or either can be during the school or through other programs. A lot of times the schools already offer this, therefore we don't offer it. So make sure to know that the school's not offering before we do any of that. We already talked about ELA. ELP is instructional programs for English learners. So it's not interpreting or translating in the school. So make sure to take note of that. It is programs for English learners. Enrichment programs. These can be some of those programs after school, right, that are focused on helping kids have good experiences, that are just, they're educational fun experiences, right? Fun activities. They can be educational field trips, going through a college visit and getting that information. A new service code that we have is the GRE, which is the graduation required electives. If we are helping a student instructionally in a class that is necessary for them to graduate, as they need those credits, then we would label this one. High school equivalency, if we are helping a student either through instruction or that are enrolled in a high school equivalency program, or either pre-assessment for those, then we mark this one. Instructional life skills, like I've mentioned, instructional life lessons provided by ISOSI or from other materials, but ISOSI is the one that we track the pre and post data because we have a lot of free resources there. Math, we talked about. And prevention education, science, and social studies is basically instruction in those subjects on a regular systematic basis. Make sure to, if you have questions on those, shoot me a message or talk to your colleagues. It's important to have a general idea of the service codes, because especially now that we're jumping into the support services, talking to your team about what services we offer as a program, because when you meet families, either as a service provider or recruiter, everybody's saying the same thing, that you don't say, oh, we offer X item, when reality is not part of the needs in your district and you're kind of misspeaking. And it's also good to ask your colleagues in other projects, because sometimes we have, well, a lot of times, we have families that move from one school district to another within our state, and therefore they just go to another service provider that's already here that we may know. So talking to them and knowing that info can be pretty helpful. Support services. The first one is advocacy. So when we refer a family to a resource that the family wouldn't have gotten without our information or without our guidance, then we mark advocacy. Now, the thing to understand with this one is that we can't just say, oh, hey, I have a buddy who can donate you a bed instead of Goodwill, because the bed, that's a good example, because the bed could have, the reason why we go through agencies for those kind of things, or we purchase some that are new, are because of the maybe it could have bed bugs. We need to be sure those agencies take those measures to ensure that those items aren't hazardous for other people. So if you just get clothes, stuff donated to you to donate to families, we don't count advocacy for those. You can give them out, but they are not known as best practice. Therefore, we don't mark it in here. But if it's an agency and they provide something to our families, or our families attempt to receive the service from them, we mark this. For example, if we guide a family to rental assistance, if they share with us that they need rental assistance and we guide them to a resource, and then that resource, they actually don't qualify, but they attempted to, we mark it because we took the time to show them that resource, and they did not, unfortunately, they didn't qualify, but they applied because of our efforts. That's advocacy. It's a heavy one, I know, but it's great. It's very commonly used, and we have some clarifications here to make sure that we don't overuse it, because we have then clothing. Clothing provided. Now, this is when we purchase clothing, not when some other agency donates it to the family. When they donate it, we mark advocacy. But when we purchase it because there's no other funding, we mark clothing. Family literacy program. Before COVID, we had a lot of family literacy programs. I wasn't here, but they told me. Now we're starting to see more of these programs start up. I've seen it a lot in homes, service providers going and helping families with this. So when you work on that, that's what we mark. Another code that we have edited recently is guidance. So with guidance, we're supporting a student either in discovering and improving their educational, personal, and career potential, connecting their skills and emotions to opportunities, creating realistic plans, and fostering positive personal and social growth through goal setting. Basically assisting our families with anything they want to obtain and helping them through goal setting. So this is not just saying, hey buddy, how's it going? Oh, your day's going okay. Well, you got this. And then you go document that you put guidance. That's not what that is, right? It's actually taking our time with the families and supporting them in these areas. Typically has a follow-up, right? To make sure that the family is doing good. That the student is doing good with it. So make sure to mark guidance after you have done all of that. It is not just saying, hey buddy, how's it going? Health services. So health services is one that's actually not very common in some areas because there's resources in the community. But when our project, when our program pays for these items, this is when we mark health services. When we refer the family to any kind of physical exam from someone else, we mark advocacy. We don't necessarily put health services. That's only when we purchase it. Homework help. When you support a student in instruction, but it doesn't meet all the criteria in the instructional service definition, which is something that is done more than once or through curriculum that is through a certified teacher, then we mark it as homework help. So if a student comes on a one-time need of what's 2 plus 2 and we help them out, that can be marked as a support service. But if it's not, trying to help them grow in a standard or really working with them through a curriculum, then we have to focus on marking homework help. So anytime that you're like, well, it doesn't really match with instructional services, that's why this code exists. Interpreting and translating, my favorite one. So as a program, we're able to interpret or translate for our families, for our students, right? We cannot do it in the school or in regards to any communication from the school. And this is because by law, the school is responsible to provide the resources and the information in the language of their families. Now, I know you're probably like, wait a minute, but not everybody's doing this. We are aware of that. And we created a guideline as to move forward from now, because there are times that we may be the only person right in front of the let's say principal and the family to support them, and the principal may be, can you do it? In that moment, we're gonna serve our students, right? We're gonna be like, yes, let me do it. After that, we need to create a plan on how to help that school know that we're not able to do that. If you happen to do that, make sure to document it, because it's important to keep track of what we did, and in your documentation explain that it was done because there was no other person to do it on the spot. But this cannot become a regular thing. That is not something that's acceptable through our program. If you're more comfortable, and I think this is the best thing I can say, is refer this situation to your coordinator so they can approach it and inform and educate any staff member, school district, or whatever to know that we can't do this as a program. Yes, we can do this outside of the school, but with anything that has to do with the school, that is their responsibility. Therefore, we can only provide supplemental services. We can't be supplanting. Next, life skills. If you provide a life skills lesson and it doesn't qualify as an instructional service, you put life skills under support services. So most of the time when it's a one-time lesson, we put it under here. Because of the nature of our OSY, because they move, sometimes we catch them only once, and that's why that code exists. The next one is mental health counseling. If we provide mental health services that are paid by either or by their program, this is where you would market. The next one is materials, just like clothing. It has to be something that is provided by us. If another program, agency, organization paid for it, then it's advocacy. But it has to be something from those agencies to mark advocacy. We have to purchase it and know that there's no other funding. Nutrition. This is not school-based programs. A lot of times when we have after-school programs, we need to feed our kids. This is the service that you mark. Other, something that shouldn't be used. Please, if you think that you have a service that is supposed to be marked other, review it with your colleagues, your data specialist. Eventually, if you all come to agreement that you can't find where it fits, give us a call. Danielle and I will probably review with you and decide where it fits best. I had one last year, one true situation that we couldn't fit anywhere and we put as other. And it was a very rare situation. So do not use other unless you really don't know. And then you can contact us and we can review that. Technical support. During COVID, there was a lot of support that our staff had with families in getting into those technology apps and Google Classroom and the email and getting the grades. If we help our families with that because no one else can help them get into that, then we mark this. A lot of times, those things can be complicated, and our staff can support them into getting a hold of those resources that are in the school, right? That they need to have. This is dying down a little bit more because COVID is going bye-bye, but just know that it's here still. If we provide MEP funded transportation because there's no other source, this is what we mark. And lastly, youth leadership programs. One of the great examples of this is kind of the Latino Summit. One thing though to note is if the school's already taking kids to the Latino Summit, we can refer them to attend the Latino Summit. If the school can't take them and it's us taking the kids, then this is when you mark this. And usually maybe it's not just youth leadership, it's together with transportation. It kind of just varies. So look at those situations, and if you ever have questions, you can just shoot me a call as well to brainstorm on where to code it. I get those sometimes, and I've noticed that in the beginning, sometimes some people will call, and as they get more comfortable, they kind of go on their own, so no worries. The last thing is the summer service codes. These are important for you to know because when we're providing summer school, summer programs, we want to make sure that it fits in one of these two criteria. Either it has a total of 30 or 74 hours of content during the program, or over 75. And if you meet those qualifications, that you would mark one of these. These are codes that are only used in the summer. That was fun. Now shoot all those questions to your colleagues or myself. We're happy to answer and get you up to speed. You got this. Keep going with the training. You know that we're all in this together. It's crazy, but it's some of the most beautiful work that you get to do. Thank you and have a good one.